Well, welcome to another episode of, I'm calling it CS101, Introduction to Christian Spirituality. And at the foundation of Christian spirituality is the Bible, Scripture. And so these first sessions really are, some people would say they're basic, but you know what? If you haven't really had access to the Bible, if you didn't grow up going to church, or if you didn't have anyone to show you, just how to find things in the Bible, it can be pretty intimidating. So, bear with me these first few sessions. You can skip them if you want to. But I think there's some folks out there that might really appreciate just going through how to find things in the Bible. And if you saw the last session of this series, you would have heard me explain a little bit about how the Bible's structured. And like I said, the Bible is really a book of books. There's a lot of books in here, and that's important to know as you're looking up biblical references. And so we're going to get into that in this session. And let me change my, let me go to the tutorial view here and make things a little bit easier, perhaps, at least for me. And I'm calling this session Find Anything, because if you know how the reference systems works in Bibles, you can find anything. And let's get to it. Like I said, the Bible is a book of books, and so there has to be some way that we are able to tell people, we're looking in this book, at this place in that book. And so any reference that you see will contain a few things. It will contain a book name such as Luke or John or Nahum. Some of the Old Testament books get, Ezekiel, kind of different types of names. So it has a book name, and then after a book name, it will have a chapter number if there's more than one chapter. All right. So some books only have one chapter, and so that can be a little confusing. It will also have a beginning verse number and an optional ending verse number, and then there are a little bit of wrinkles along with that. So I'm going to show you a book plus basically a reference, which is Luke chapter 3, verse 1. And I don't know if you want to pause the video and look that up. And again, we're going to get into translation, so the wording that you have might be a little different than what I have. But if I look up Luke chapter 1, verse 13, verse 1, it says, "In the 15th year of the reign of Emperor Tiberius, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, and Herod was ruler of Galilee, and his brother Philip ruler of the region of Iturea, and Trachonitis, and Lysanias, ruler of Abilene." Well, I could have probably picked out a verse with a little bit easier words, but you get the sense. If you see some of those words in your verse, hey, I found it. Here is another reference, but this time you're looking at Luke chapter 3, verse 1, and if someone's reading this like in church or a Bible study, they will read verses 1 all the way through verse 12. Now, I'm not going to read all those verses, but if you found Luke chapter 3, verse 1, and you read all the way to verse 12, including verse 12, the last verse, verse 12, would be this: "Even tax collectors came to be baptized, and they asked him, 'Teacher, what should we do?'" And so, if you found that, then you've got it. You're on a roll. Now, this next reference is a little different. It's Luke chapter 3, 1 through 3, then verse 7, then verses 11 to 12. And yes, sometimes you will see references exactly like this. And you will probably already know that you start out reading verse 1, you read all the way through verse 3, including verse 3. Then you would skip down to verse 7, which is, "John said to the crowds that came out to be baptized by him, 'You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come?'" Pretty encouraging and uplifting verse, but John was trying to get them to change their ways, to head in a new direction where they might find life rather than death. And then verses 11 and 12, you just look down, you find verse 11, you read that one, and you read verse 12 as well, and then you have it. Now, sometimes the references will go all the way through the next chapter. And so basically you read from verse 12 all the way through chapter 4 and end with the 5th verse. And so that can be an exercise that you can do. I'm sure you'll do just fine. If you've done the others, you'll do fine on this one. And the reason why I wanted to go through this is because once you understand the reference system, you can find anything. There are a lot of books. There's 66 books in this one book. And so if you understand how to find the books, again, the table of contents at the beginning will help you find that book. I talked about that in the last session, so I didn't talk about it this time. And then you understand the chapters and verses, you'll do fine. And I want to encourage you because as with anything, with time comes familiarity. So if you spend time with the Bible, if you spend time reading the Bible, looking things up, you'll become familiar with it. And I believe it really will be a blessing to your life, bringing you peace, direction, and guidance. And so before I close out, I just want to give you an action plan. Look these up. John 3, 1 through 16, Romans 8:28, and Psalm chapter 1. Oh, I kind of gave it away. I was going to say figure out, what you're supposed to read, but I'll let you know. You read that whole chapter. There's no verses afterwards, so you read the whole chapter. Well, I do hope that this was helpful for you, especially in your faith, and I pray that as you continue to seek God and follow after Him, that your life would truly be blessed. Well, blessings.